For nearly 2 decades, we have been waiting for a new F-Zero entry. And for some time, there was debate and concern if we would get anything new for the F-Zero series. A number of different Nintendo developers have expressed not the most promising statements for the future of the series, including even Shigeru Miyamoto. In an interview back in 2013 with IGN, he said this: "I think where I struggle is that I don't really have a good idea for what's new that we could bring to F-Zero that would really turn it into a great game again. I don't know, at this point, what direction we could go in with a new F-Zero. But it looks like they finally found that direction with F-Zero 99. This game is for free on Nintendo Switch Online, and it's causing a stir. So much of a stir that I think this bodes well for the future of the series. And that's what we're talking about today." Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and this time we are talking about F-Zero. And not just F-Zero 99, but that will be a big part of this discussion. The game is out, it's great, I've been enjoying it, it's a highlight of the Nintendo Direct, and it's really bringing in a lot of new players to the F-Zero series, which is fantastic. But I also think that there could be something else for F-Zero on the horizon, and perhaps even beyond that as well. So that's the plan, but before going forward, let me point out we are aiming to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. With your help, it just might be possible. So talking specifically about F-Zero 99 first. Given that this game is free for Nintendo Switch Online members, the barrier of entry is pretty darn low. And we are seeing a lot of people jumping into this game and giving it a try. And I think that's something special about this. People are giving F-Zero a try, a very niche Nintendo franchise that, as I explained in the exposition for this video, we've been waiting for a new entry for nearly 20 years, almost 2 whole decades. And the extra good news here is that F-Zero 99 not only does it have a low barrier of entry so people are giving it a try, but it's actually good. And this is interesting because there were rumors that we would be getting maybe a GX Remastered or something of the sort for this Nintendo Direct, and those have not come to fruition yet. But what we have here is something that is fresh and new and exciting. Now, yes, it is a repurposing of the Super Nintendo original, but they've brought on some really new exciting elements. You have the sparks you can collect that come about from collisions that lead to access to the Skyway, which is almost like a little bit of a rubber banding effect, where you have a way to make a comeback, which is somewhat reminiscent of the Mario Kart games where there are a number of comeback mechanics. But for this, it doesn't feel luck-based, it feels something earned, and considering that now it's 99 racers, which is a lot more hectic, there's a lot more combat and collisions and explosions occurring, even when you're a great player, you can lose your way, so having access to the Skyway to make a bit of a comeback and clear the path, not only does it mix up the gameplay, but it gives you a bit more hope to make an exciting comeback towards the end. Which I would say is even more thrilling now, because it's 99 racers, not just the 30 from prior F-Zero games. So what I'm getting at here is they've done something interesting with the F-Zero formula. They've mixed it up and they've made it inviting for a larger player base. And there's just something that's kind of cool to see, even though with the SNES graphics they've put it into widescreen HD, the pixels are clear, it's colorful, there are nice, interesting HUD elements as well. But also when you start the races, the way they've adapted the tracks, it all starts out with 99 racers in this long line, in this big straightaway that's a new track that we haven't seen before, that eventually leads to the repurposed tracks from the original F-Zero release. And that is tracks. When we first heard about this possibility of F-Zero 99, there was some concern of how simplistic it would be, but there are 15 tracks in the game from what I can see, and there's a number of things you can do. There's a challenge mode, there's the occasional Grand Prix, there is the standard F-Zero 99, you can jump into practice and do all the different tracks and race as you unlock them, and there's unlockables as well with different aesthetics with your vehicles. There is a level of progression here, and rankings as well. This is a meaty 99 game that also clearly is paying homage to the series. You see the different pieces of art and an overall very pleasant menu system. This wasn't just a quick job, this was something that was done with care and love. NST, the developer for this, has done a great job. And we're hearing about a lot of people playing this game, getting in on this game. And for the most part, it seems like Many are very high on this release. A lot of people are falling in love with FZero 99. We even heard from one of the initial key developers of FZero who's currently retired, and they had some great things to say. Now keep in mind this is a Google translation, but it reads, "A bold arrangement that respects the original elements. I felt the love for FZero. I would like to express my deepest gratitude to the creator. We are looking forward to the revival of this IP." Which brings me to my next big point here, where he says we are looking forward to the revival of this IP. I don't think FZero 99 is it, but rather I think this is just the beginning. This is the revival of the IP. It's not just a single game that will be a little blip in history. I do think Nintendo has more for F-Zero planned. Let's go back to the FZero GX Remaster. This has been rumored, and there's been some debate if the GX Remaster is no longer happening because of this FZero 99. Is it possible that there's some conflation here and the GX Remaster was never going to happen? Not necessarily. Before the Nintendo Direct, Nate the Hate, during his podcast with the Direct Predictions, did say what he heard was a GX Remaster. And I also reached out to my buddy Nintendo Prime, who at one point had a source on this as well, and said that what he heard was a GX Remaster. Now there's an additional rumor that suggests that this GX Remaster is being worked on by Next Level Games. And I want to make it clear that the sourcing on this is not as great as just GX being a thing, being remastered. So take this with even more salt than the GX Remaster happening. But if it is the case that Next Level Games is working on this GX Remaster, it would make sense because FZero 99 was not made by Next Level Games, it was made by NST. So separate developers here, which would bode well for the GX Remaster and it not being a conflated rumor. And again, rumor, take it with a grain of salt, but if it is Next Level Games that's behind the GX Remaster, given that that's an internal Nintendo studio now, and it's not being outsourced by some smaller developer, it does come with the implication that there's some significant work being done here. It's not just going to be a basic upscale like we saw with Pikmin 1 and 2, but something more prominent, maybe something like Metroid Prime Remastered, or maybe something like the recently announced Paper Mario Thousand Year Door that has entirely new visuals. And considering what Nintendo has done with FZero 99, how they considered this online component, this massive multiplayer component for the F-Zero series, they could even go into this GX Remaster with some perspective on changing around some things, including an extensive online mode, and doing it in a way that's going to make it inviting for a large player base. There is something to the idea of having multiplayer games that you can continue to go back to. F-Zero has had local multiplayer over the years, but it's not quite the same. It's not as infectious and fun as, say, the Mario Kart series. But what they've done with FZero 99, which is almost entirely multiplayer, that's the main purpose of the game, Nintendo may have found a way, a new idea to invigorate the series that they could take forward with not just FZero 99, and maybe not even just a GX Remaster that has some potentially nice additions, but even eventually a new F-Zero game as well. I think it's important to note that there have been a lot of reports that Switch 2 is coming out sometime next year. And when you look at how Nintendo handled the last 3 years for Nintendo 3DS, the last year before Switch came out and the 2 years after Switch came out, there was a lot of remasters and remakes on the 3DS. That was the majority of the games we saw, kind of like what we're seeing here in 2023 and what's being announced for 2024. So the point is, there's a lot of remasters and remakes coming. The F-Zero one could just be another one that they're saving for the next coming couple years. It could be announced the next Direct, or perhaps a Direct in 2025. Nintendo may be pulling together a number of potential remakes and remasters to keep the Switch relevant for years to come. And it's also something that may look and play really well on a Switch 2 that can sport amazing 4K visuals with ray tracing. And if that does well, following what appears to be some solid momentum with F-Zero 99, they may eventually go and make a proper brand new F-Zero game. And that could be a pretty big deal. Maybe finally we'll have more than just Mario Kart to enjoy in terms of Nintendo racers. Nintendo actually has a pretty good library of racing games. It would be nice if they started going back to them. And with F-Zero 99, I would say that's a very promising start, after what's been quite a bit of a drought. But what do you guys think? What do you make of the future of the F-Zero series, and how do you feel about F-Zero 99? I am ecstatic, and I'm loving it. But that's all for now. I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.